In 1969, Arnold Schwarzenegger stepped on stage at the Mr. Olympia, expecting to win. He dominated Europe, captured magazine covers, and believed his time had come. Then Sergio Oliva walked out. Arnold stared. The crowd gasped. Judges whispered among themselves. Arnold lost. The only Olympia defeat of his entire career. The man who beat him? A Cuban defector who'd grown up cutting sugarcane with machete, escaped his homeland in a desperate midnight run, and arrived in America with nothing but the clothes on his back. This is the untold Mr. Olympia history of Sergio Oliva, the man they called the myth because people literally didn't believe his physique was real. You're about to discover how Cuban poverty forged the most feared bodybuilder in golden era bodybuilding, and why, even today, his genetics remain untouchable. But here's what nobody talked about: the single moment of political betrayal that nearly erased him from history entirely, right when he should have been unstoppable. That moment came in the early 1970s, and it changed everything. Let's go back to where it started. Not in a gym, not on a stage. In the fields, Guantanamo region, Cuba, early 1950s. The air is thick, humid, heavy with the smell of cut cane and sweat. A boy walks barefoot through mud, swinging a machete that weighs almost as much as he does. He's 12 years old. His name is Sergio Oliva, and he's one of 22 children in a family so poor that a pair of shoes is a luxury they'll never afford. His father cuts sugarcane for pennies. Brutal, back-breaking labor under the Caribbean sun that never stops burning. When Sergio turns 12, school ends. Not because he wants to quit, because the family needs another set of hands in the fields. So he picks up a blade and starts hacking cane alongside his father, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, just so the family can eat rice and beans at night. This is how classic bodybuilding legends are born, not in protein shakes and air-conditioned gym, in survival, in hunger, in the kind of poverty that marks you forever. Sergio's hands develop thick calluses by age 13. His back thickens from swinging that machete 8,000 times a day. His forearms grow dense and rope-like from gripping the wooden handle until his palms bleed. His legs turn into pillars from walking miles through muddy fields, carrying bundles of cane that would break most grown men. He doesn't know what bodybuilding is. He's never seen a barbell. He doesn't even know gyms exist. But his body is already learning the only lesson that matters. You carry the weight or you starve. The sugarcane doesn't care if you're tired. Neither does hunger. Neither does Cuba. For years past like this. Swing the blade. Carry the cane. Eat whatever's left. Sleep on a mat. Wake up and do it again. Sergio grows stronger, but he also grows restless. He sees his father's hands, gnarled, scarred, used up by decades in the fields. He sees his older brothers, already bent over from the work, and he thinks, there has to be something else. There has to be a way out. Then, in 1957, his father makes a decision that changes everything. Cuba is changing. Fidel Castro's rebel forces are fighting Fulgencio Batista's government in the mountains. The country is splitting apart. Violence is spreading. Sergio's father tells him to join Batista's army, not because he believes in politics, but because soldiers eat 3 meals a day. They get boots. They get paid. For a family that has nothing, the army is opportunity. Sergio is 16 years old and has no birth certificate. Nobody in his family does. So the recruiter just takes his father's word. The boy from the cane fields becomes a soldier. Here's what most people don't know about Sergio Oliva Cuban poverty. Before he was a bodybuilder, before he was a myth, he was a teenage soldier in a war he didn't understand, fighting for a government that would lose everything within 2 years. The army is hard, but it's not the fields. Sergio gets food. He gets a uniform. He gets a rifle. He marches, trains, follows orders. But in 1959, Castro wins. The revolution succeeds. Batista flees to the Dominican Republic. The army collapses overnight. Sergio finds himself on the wrong side of history. A teenager whose side just lost, whose commander is gone, whose future just evaporated. He returns home. No job, no prospects. The revolution promises equality, but what Sergio sees is control, restrictions, surveillance, fear. He drifts for months. He spends his days at the beach near Havana, watching the water, wondering if he'll spend the rest of his life cutting cane like his father. That's when he wanders into a small weightlifting club near the shore. Inside, he sees something he's never seen before: men lifting barbells overhead. Clean and jerks, snatches, military presses. Olympic weightlifting. The movements look powerful, explosive, beautiful. He watches for an hour, mesmerized. A coach notices him standing in the doorway. "You want to try?" the coach asks. Sergio nods. The coach hands him an empty barbell, just 45 pounds. "Lift it over your head," he says. Sergio grabs it, yanks it to his chest in one motion, then drives it overhead. The coach's eyes widen. "Do it again," he says. Sergio does. Heavier this time. Still easy. The coach writes something in a notebook. Other lifters stop their workouts and watch. One of them whispers to the coach. The coach nods, then looks at Sergio. "Come back tomorrow," he says. "We're going to test you properly." This is where the spark ignites. This is where a poor kid from the cane fields discovers he's built different. Within 3 months, Sergio joins Cuba's national weightlifting team. He trains 6 days a week in a cramped facility with concrete floors and rusty equipment. Wooden platforms that shake when you drop the weight. Iron plates that rattle and clang. No air conditioning. No mirrors. Just heavy lifts, snatch, clean and jerk, military press. Sergio's body explodes. His shoulders grow round and thick. His arms swell with muscle that looks carved from stone. His back develops the kind of density that only Olympic lifters get, layer upon layer of muscle built from pulling hundreds of pounds off the floor, over and over, thousands of reps across thousands of hours. He becomes one of Cuba's top-ranked light heavyweights. Coaches call him a prodigy. They say he has a gift from God. But Sergio knows the truth. His gift didn't come from God. It came from 12 years old in the sugarcane fields, swinging a machete until his hands bled. The weight room didn't create his strength. It just revealed what the fields had already built. By 1961, Sergio is training for international competition. He's 20 years old, one of the best lifters in Cuba, and finally making a name for himself. But there's a shadow over everything. Castro's Cuba is tightening. Travel restrictions, surveillance. Athletes are watched closely because they're propaganda tools. Proof that the revolution creates champions. But Sergio hears whispers. Other athletes talking in low voices about escape, about defection, about risking everything for freedom. He doesn't say much. He just listens. And every single day, he thinks about it. In 1962, the Cuban national weightlifting team travels to Kingston, Jamaica for the Central American and Caribbean Games. It's a rare opportunity. Cuban athletes outside the island, surrounded by foreign embassies, hundreds of miles from Havana's eyes. Team stays in a hotel near downtown Kingston. At night, Sergio lies awake in his room, staring at the ceiling, knowing this might be his only chance. Other teammates feel the same way. They make a plan. Quiet, careful, dangerous. Here's what happens. One night, after curfew, several Cuban weightlifters slip out of the hotel. They move fast through Kingston's dark streets. Sergio is with them. They know Cuban officials will notice they're gone. They know soldiers might come looking. They know if they're caught, they'll be sent back to Cuba in chains. But they also know the U.S. Embassy is only 6 blocks away, so they run. Dress shoes slapping on pavement, hearts pounding, sweat soaking through their shirts despite the cool night air. Behind them, shouts in Spanish. Someone saw them leave. Someone is following. They reach the embassy gates. Sergio pounds on the metal door. "Asilo politico," he shouts. Political asylum. A guard appears. Sergio and the others push their way through, stumbling into the compound, gasping for air. The door slams shut behind them. Outside, Cuban officials are screaming, demanding the embassy release the athletes. Inside, American personnel are already making phone calls, starting paperwork, explaining what happens next. Sergio sits on a bench, hand shaking, realizing what he just did. He can never go home. His family is still in Cuba. His mother, his father, his 21 siblings. He may never see them again, but he's free. For the first time in his life, he's free. The asylum process takes months. Sergio lives in limbo. Not Cuban anymore, not American yet. Just a man without a country waiting for paperwork. Finally, in 1963, he gets approval. He boards a plane to Miami. He lands with almost nothing. A small bag of clothes. $70 in his pocket. Broken English. No family. No job. No plan. He's 22 years old. A Cuban defector turned champion weightlifter with nowhere to go and no idea what comes next. Miami is brutal. Sergio works whatever jobs he can find. Washing dishes, repairing televisions, hauling scrap metal. The work is hard, but it's nothing compared to the cane fields. What's hard is the isolation. He speaks almost no English. He knows nobody. He eats cheap rice and canned beans because that's all he can afford. At night, he lies on a couch in a shared apartment with 5 other Cuban refugees, listening to them talk about the families they left behind. And he thinks, I didn't escape Cuba for this. There has to be more. After 6 months, someone tells him there are more jobs up north, better pay, bigger Cuban communities. So Sergio takes a bus to Chicago. He arrives in winter. He's never seen snow before. He walks through the south side in a thin jacket, freezing, looking for work. He finds a factory job, heavy labor, lifting industrial parts, operating machines. The pay is better than Miami. He rents a room in a boarding house. He studies English at night. Wells High School offers classes for immigrants trying to pass citizenship tests. He sits in classrooms meant for teenagers, a 23-year-old man with shoulders that don't fit through doorways, learning how to conjugate verbs and read American newspapers. But here's the thing about Sergio Oliva. He never stops lifting, even when he's exhausted from factory work, even when he's broke, even when Chicago's winter cold makes his joints ache. He finds a Duncan YMCA on the south side, a small, no-frills gym with rusty barbells and concrete floors. He starts training there every evening after work. Heavy squats, heavy bench presses, heavy rows, the same explosive Olympic lifts he did in Cuba, and people start noticing. At first, it's just a few guys on the second-floor balcony watching the weight room. Then it's 10 guys, then 20. Word spreads. There's a Cuban at the Duncan who looks like nothing anyone's ever seen. They watch him squat 500 pounds for rep. They watch him bench press 400 like it's empty. They watch him curl 150-pound barbells with strict form. But it's not just the weight. It's the way he looks. His shoulders are round like bowling balls, sitting on top of a torso that's impossibly wide. His arms hang away from his sides because his lats are so thick. His waist is tiny, maybe 28 inches, making his upper body look even more massive. His legs are huge, but perfectly shaped. He doesn't look like a weightlifter. He doesn't look like a bodybuilder. He looks like someone drew a superhero and then brought the drawing to life. One day, a local bodybuilder approaches him. You ever think about competing? The guy asks. Sergio doesn't understand at first. Competing? In what? The guy explains. Bodybuilding contests. You pose. Show your muscles. Judges pick a winner. Prize money. Trophies. Sergio shrugs. He doesn't care about trophies, but he needs money. So he says yes. 1965. His first contest. Mr. Chicago. Sergio walks on stage wearing borrowed posing trunks. He's never posed before. He doesn't know the routine. He just lifts his arms and flexes. The judges freeze. One of them leans over and whispers to another. The audience goes quiet. Then someone starts clapping. Then everyone is clapping. Sergio wins, easily. After the show, people crowd around him, asking questions he can't fully understand. One word keeps coming up, unreal. They keep saying he looks unreal. He competes again 2 months later. Mr. Illinois, same result. He walks out, hits a few poses, and the room reacts like they're seeing something that shouldn't exist. After that show, someone calls him the Myth. The nickname spreads. Sergio the Myth Oliva, because you had to see him in person to believe it. Photos didn't capture the density, the shape, the impossible proportions. Only standing next to him, seeing the way his muscles seemed to have their own muscles. Only then did people understand. By 1966, Sergio isn't just winning local shows. He's winning national titles. IFBB Mr. World, IFBB Mr. Universe, Joe Weider puts him on magazine covers. Bodybuilding fans across America are seeing this Cuban immigrant, this former sugarcane worker, this defector, destroying competition with physique that looks 20 years ahead of its time. And Sergio, he's still working. By now, he's become a Chicago police officer, walking beats on the South Side, protecting neighborhoods, showing kids that even freaky muscle giants can have normal jobs. He wakes up at 5 a.m., hits the gym before his shift, works 8 hours as a cop, then trains again in the evening, 6 days a week. No breaks, no shortcuts, because that's what you do when you grew up with nothing. You never take anything for granted. Let's talk about what made Sergio different. It wasn't just size. Plenty of guys were big. It was the structure. His measurements tell part of the story. Contests weighed around 235 to 240 pounds at 5'10", arms measuring 20.5 to 22 inches cold, shoulders 62 inches around, waist 28 to 29 inches at his sharpest, thighs over 28 inches, calves around 19 inches. But numbers don't capture what people saw in person. His deltoids looked like bowling balls sitting on shelves. His triceps hung off his arms like separate animals. His lats spread so wide in a front pose, his arms seemed to float in space. His chest was thick but not overdeveloped, perfectly proportioned to his shoulders and arms. His abs were deep, separated, visible even when he wasn't flexing. His legs matched his upper body perfectly. No weak points, no imbalances, just flowing symmetry from top to bottom. People who saw him compete talk about the density. Not just muscle size, but muscle quality. Every fiber visible. No smooth spots. No water. Just granite-hard tissue packed onto a frame that seemed designed by someone who understood perfection. Modern bodybuilders talk about 3D delts and Christmas tree backs. Sergio had both in 1967, before those terms existed. Judges would stand next to him on stage during comparisons and literally shake their heads. One judge from the 1968 Olympia later said, "We couldn't find a flaw. His structure was flawless." Then, in 1967, everything changes. The Mr. Olympia, New York City, the biggest title in bodybuilding. Only 2 years old at that point. Larry Scott won the first 2 Olympias with his famous arms and peak biceps. Now Scott is retired and the field is wide open. Sergio enters. He walks on stage at 235 pounds with a 28-inch waist. When he hits his first pose, arms up, lats flared, the crowd erupts. He's not just bigger than everyone else. He's shaped differently. His torso forms a perfect V. His legs are massive but perfectly proportioned. He looks like what bodybuilders dream about becoming. When they announce his name as Mr. Olympia, the room explodes. Sergio Oliva, the Cuban defector turned champion, just became the king of bodybuilding. But in 1968, that's when things get weird. Sergio decides to defend his title. He enters the 1968 Mr. Olympia, and nobody else shows up, not one competitor. The entire professional bodybuilding world looks at Sergio Oliva and decides their best move is to stay home. He wins unopposed. The only Mr. Olympia in history where the champion had no competition. Think about that. He was so far beyond everyone, so genetically superior, that grown men with egos the size of planets decided they had no chance. Sergio walks on stage alone, hits a few poses for the audience, and collects his trophy. It should feel like victory. Instead, it feels strange, hollow, like he's so dominant he broke the sport. But behind the scenes, something else is happening. Sergio is training harder than ever. He's working with Arthur Jones now, the Nautilus machine inventor who's pioneering high-intensity training. Jones is obsessed with Sergio's genetics. He calls Sergio the greatest physical specimen he's ever seen. Jones puts him through sessions that would destroy normal humans. 1 set per exercise, taking an absolute failure, then force reps, then partials, then negatives, all with almost no rest between exercises. 20 minutes of pure torture. Sergio also maintains his volume work, the traditional bodybuilding approach he learned from Chicago gyms. So he's hitting muscles from both angles. High-intensity brutality from Jones, high-volume punishment from his own sessions. A typical week looks like this. Monday, chest and back supersets, bench press, barbell rows, incline press, chin-ups, dips, pull-downs, 20-plus sets total. Tuesday, shoulders and arm supersets, military press, barbell curls, lateral raises, tricep extensions, more supersets, 20-plus sets. Wednesday, legs, squats, leg presses, leg curls, calf raises, heavy and brutal. Thursday, repeat. Friday, repeat. Saturday, repeat or rest depending on how he feels. Sunday, sometimes rest, sometimes light work. Add in the Nautilus sessions once or twice a week, and you have a training volume that would bury most modern pros. He eats like a machine. Steak, eggs, rice, potatoes, chicken, more steak. Protein shakes made with whole milk and raw eggs. No fancy supplements. No meal timing protocols. Just massive amounts of food, 6 to 8 times per day, fueling a metabolism running at full blast. He sleeps 8 hours minimum. He works his police shifts. He trains clients at the gym. He poses for magazine photographers. He's living at maximum capacity, 24 hours a day, and his body responds by staying absolutely shredded year-round. Then Arnold Schwarzenegger arrives in America, and everything gets interesting again. 1969. Arnold is 22, already famous in Europe, cocky and charismatic and huge. He's won Mr. Universe multiple times. He's doing movies. He's been on the cover of every European bodybuilding magazine. He comes to America believing he's going to dominate, believing he's the future. He's heard about Sergio. Everyone's heard about Sergio. But Arnold doesn't think anyone can stop him. He thinks his time has come. He's about to find out he's wrong. September 1969. Mr. Olympia, New York. Backstage, Arnold and Sergio stand 20 feet apart, both pumping blood into their muscles, both oiling their skin, both mentally preparing. Arnold glances over at Sergio. He sees the back, the thickness, the width, the way Sergio's lats spread like wings, the way his shoulders sit on top of all that mass like armor plating. Arnold's face changes. Later, in interviews, he'll admit that moment shook him, that seeing Sergio up close in person, backstage under harsh lights, made him realize he wasn't ready. But it's too late to back out now. They walk on stage. The crowd is packed. This is the matchup everyone wanted to see. Arnold, the charismatic Austrian champion. Sergio, the genetic freak Cuban legend. The posing begins. Front double biceps. Sergio's arms explode. His lats flare out. So wide his arms seem afloat. His waist vanishes into nothing. Arnold looks huge, but Sergio looks impossible. Side chest. Arnold's better here. His pec shelf thicker, his abs deeper. Most muscular. Both men are incredible, but Sergio's density is unmatched. Back double biceps. Sergio's back looks like a relief map, every muscle separated and carved. Arnold's back is big, but it's smoother, less detailed. The judges deliberate for what feels like an hour. The crowd is split. Half are yelling for Arnold. Half are chanting Sergio's name. When they announce Sergio Oliva as the winner, the room explodes. Half the audience cheers. Half boos. Arnold stands on stage, stone-faced, staring straight ahead. It's the only Mr. Olympia loss of his entire career. After the show, Arnold disappears. He doesn't talk to reporters. He doesn't go to the after party. He goes back to his hotel room and sits in the dark, staring at the wall, replaying every pose in his head, trying to figure out how to never lose again. That loss will haunt him, and it will make him better. But right now, it just hurts. For Sergio, this is the peak. 3-time Mr. Olympia, undefeated at bodybuilding's highest level, feared by every competitor in the world. He's 30 years old, working as a Chicago cop, training like a madman, and living proof that Cuban defectors can become legends. But something is about to crack. The politics start in 1970. Sergio and the IFBB begin having serious disagreements. He wants more money for guest posing appearances. The IFBB says no. He wants control over his competition schedule. The IFBB says champions compete when and where the organization decides. He wants respect. He's a 3-time champion, the man who won unopposed, the genetic freak who beat Arnold Schwarzenegger. But Joe Weider and the IFBB leadership are building Arnold into a superstar. Arnold speaks perfect English. Arnold is charismatic. Arnold is doing movies and appearing on talk shows. Arnold is the face of bodybuilding's future. Sergio is the immigrant cop with broken English who won't play the game. In 1970, Sergio doesn't compete at the Mr. Olympia. He's angry, frustrated, feeling disrespected. Arnold wins easily his first Olympia title. The torch has officially passed. Or has it? Sergio watches from home, seething, convinced he could still beat Arnold if the politics weren't in the way. He returns in 1972. Mr. Olympia in Essen, Germany. Sergio flies over, confident he's going to reclaim his title. He hits the stage in incredible shape. Maybe not quite as sharp as 1969, but still massive, still dense, still the myth. Arnold is there too, bigger than before, more polished. The posing begins. Sergio hits his signature poses. The crowd roars. But when results come in, Sergio places fourth. Fourth, behind Arnold, Sergio's teammate, and two other competitors. The audience erupts in boos. People are yelling that the judging was political, that Sergio was robbed. Sergio stands backstage, stunned. He doesn't understand. He knows he looked good. He knows his shape was still better than most of the lineup, but the judges scored him fourth. He competes again in 1973. Second place behind Arnold. More controversy. More accusations of biased judging. Sergio is convinced now. The IFBB doesn't want him winning anymore. They have their star in Arnold, and Sergio is the inconvenient former champion who won't go away quietly. So he makes a decision. He leaves the IFBB. He starts competing in other federations. NABI Universe. WBBG World Championships. He wins Mr. World, Mr. Galaxy, Mr. Olympus. He proves he's still elite, still dominant when politics aren't involved. He travels to England, to Germany, to South America, competing in front of crowds who remember his dominance, who chant his name, who tell him he's still the best. But it's not the same. The IFBB has Arnold now, and Arnold is in movies, and bodybuilding is becoming mainstream, and Sergio is on the outside looking in. This is the betrayal. This is a political moment that almost destroyed his legacy. Not a physical defeat, a systematic erasure. The organization he helped build decided he wasn't the right image anymore. So they judged him down, pushed him out, and rewrote history with Arnold as the singular golden era icon. Sergio kept competing through the mid-1970s and early 1980s. Still impressive, still winning titles in smaller federations. But the spotlight had moved on. Then his personal life falls apart. The 1980s bring painful chapters at home. Serious domestic difficulties. A violent incident that almost kills him. His wife shoots him during a confrontation. Sergio nearly dies. He survives, recovers, and they eventually reconcile. But the damage runs deep. Sergio, the man who escaped Cuba, who survived poverty, who dominated the biggest bodybuilding stages in the world, almost dies in his own house. Fame doesn't protect you from private pain. Genetics don't shield you from real life. The myth wasn't invincible after all. He was just a man, wounded, struggling, human. But Sergio doesn't quit. He recovers. He keeps working as a Chicago cop, eventually retiring after decades of service. He keeps training, not for competition anymore, just because lifting is part of who he is. He mentors young bodybuilders who come to the gym looking for advice. He tells them about Cuba, about the escape, about the Olympia stage, about beating Arnold. And they listen like he's describing ancient history, because to them, he is history. In the late 1990s, something happens that Sergio never thought possible. Cuba allows him to return for a visit. After 35 years in exile, he goes back. He sees his family, his mother, now elderly, his siblings grown and with families of their own. He walks through the streets where he grew up. He visits the sugarcane fields where he worked as a boy. People recognize him. Old men remember Sergio, the weightlifter who left. They ask him about America. He tells them the truth. It was hard, brutally hard, but it was worth it. He made a life. He became something. He proved you can escape poverty and become a legend. The visit is emotional. He cries seeing his mother. He cries walking through the old neighborhood. He cries standing in those fields, remembering what it felt like to be 12 years old with a machete in his hands, believing this was all life would ever be. Now he's standing there at 50-something, an American citizen, a former police officer, a 3-time Mr. Olympia, living proof that desperation can become greatness. The 2000s bring quieter years. Sergio's in his 60s now, still massive, still training, but no longer competing. He watches the sport evolve. Bodybuilders hitting 250, 270, 300 pounds. Physiques built with chemicals he never used at those levels. Modern fans discover his old photos online and can't believe what they're seeing. Bodybuilding forums light up with debates. Could Sergio compete today? Why does he look better than modern pros at 235? How was his waist that small? Was he really natural? Arnold posts tributes calling Sergio the most genetically gifted bodybuilder he ever saw. Ronnie Coleman says Sergio was unreal. Kai Green studies his victory pose. Phil Heath calls him 50 years ahead of his time. Iron Man magazine runs features on forgotten legends and puts Sergio on the cover. The headline, "The myth lives on why Sergio Oliva was the greatest genetic freak in bodybuilding history." Inside, they break down his measurements, his training, his career. They interview people who competed against him. Every single one says the same thing. You had to see him in person. Photos didn't do him justice. He looked impossible. On November 12, 2012, Sergio Oliva dies in Chicago. Kidney failure. He's 71 years old. The bodybuilding community responds immediately. Tributes flood in from every corner of the sport. Arnold releases a statement. Sergio had the greatest genetics I've ever seen. Nobody looked like him. Nobody will ever look like him again. Beating him in 1970 was my proudest moment because I knew what I had to overcome. Old-timers post photos from the 1960s and 1970s. Young lifters see them for the first time, their jaws dropping. Because even now, even knowing what modern bodybuilders look like with all the drugs and science and training knowledge that exists today, Sergio's physique still looks futuristic. At his memorial service in Chicago, hundreds of people show up, cops in uniform, bodybuilders in suits, neighborhood people who knew him as Officer Sergio. They show old competition footage on projector. Sergio hitting that famous victory pose, arms up, back spread, waist invisible. Sergio in his police uniform, smiling next to neighborhood kids. Sergio as a young Cuban refugee, standing in front of the Duncan YMCA, looking lost but determined. And everyone in that room realizes the same thing. They just watch the myth become real, then become a myth again. So let's resolve that opening loop. What almost destroyed Sergio Oliva's career? It was a political betrayal of the early 1970s. The IFBB systematically judging him down, pushing him out, erasing his dominance from a narrative because he didn't fit the image they wanted. Arnold was a future, charismatic, English-speaking, movie star handsome. Sergio was the past, an immigrant cop with an accent, a genetic freak who wouldn't play politics. So they rewrote history. They turned Arnold into the sole golden era icon. And Sergio, he became a footnote, a what if, a legend whispered about but not celebrated. But here's the truth. Sergio Oliva proved your starting point doesn't determine your ending. Cuban poverty, sugarcane fields, political refugee, no money, no English, no connections, no advantages whatsoever. He still became Mr. Olympia 3 times. He still beat Arnold Schwarzenegger. He still built a physique that modern science can't fully replicate. Real golden era bodybuilding stories aren't about shortcuts. They're about men who had nothing and created everything through pure will and impossible genetics. The myth died in 2012, but the legend lives on in every photo, every tribute, every old-timer who saw him in person and still shakes their head in disbelief. Some physiques don't fade, some stories don't age, and some Cuban defectors who swung machetes in fields become exactly what everyone said was impossible. That's Sergio Oliva. That's the myth. That's the man who rose from Cuban poverty to Mr. Olympia and changed bodybuilding forever.